We're visiting with David Peel, attorney. David, how long have you been practicing law, and what specific type of legal support will your clients benefit the most?
I've been practicing law for almost 20 years. I limit my practice to injury, death, and disability cases.
What would be some examples?
For instance, recently resolved a case against a large trucking firm. I recently worked with a case involving medical malpractice at a nursing home facility. And then there is the more common car accidents, motorcycle accidents, and on-the-job injuries.
What are some common mistakes people make when choosing a lawyer?
I think there's an assumption that the only people who do injury law are the ones that people have heard about on TV or seen on TV. And in reality, there's 3,500 licensed lawyers in Shelby County. The majority of them will take an injury case, especially if it's clear or seems to be profitable. The question becomes, which ones do you want to deal with and interact with? And I think one of maybe a good factor would be, did the lawyer meet with you personally, or did they just send somebody to you? That's probably a good factor as to how personal your relationship might become with that lawyer.
If I've been in an accident, there's usually a lot going on at the time. Things are happening very fast. I potentially could be severely injured or maybe even unconscious and have to be carried to a hospital by ambulance. What should be my first steps I should take, say the accident there at the scene? If I'm able to, what should be the first steps I would take? And what should I do after regaining consciousness if I have to be taken to a hospital?
Right. After an accident, if you're able to render medical assistance or get somebody out of a burning car, obviously you want to do that and call 911. Once things are a little bit more calm, it's really a good idea to take some pictures of the scene in general. It just helps to keep everybody very honest once the vehicle's removed. Another thing that you might want to do is don't ever take for granted that the witnesses that saw the accident will talk to the police officer, because about 5 times out of 10 they leave and the police officer just doesn't get their information. So go ahead and get at least a name and a phone number from all the witnesses, and that way if they leave, it's not a problem. We can deal with that later.
What do you offer your clients that typically is not offered with other law firms?
I would say one thing that we really stress is personal service. People get to know us. We're a small office. We're not trying to be the biggest, and we don't take every case. But one of the things that I think makes us stand out is that we're pretty outspoken about our faith and about the way we go about doing our cases. It is not unusual at all for us to pray before depositions and things like that. That being said, a lot of lawyers can do a decent job. I think the scenario becomes, who do you want to spend time with? Bedside manner matters to me with my doctor, and it matters to me with my lawyer.
Well, as you mentioned, you are a Christian that practices law. How do you personally connect the two in today's legal world?
I can understand why people might assume that you couldn't be a Christian and a lawyer with some of the things that we see on TV and hear. In my scenario, my calling was very specific to help injured people, and that's really all I've done for any significant portion of my practice. My kind of joke is I don't get people out of debt, jail, or a marriage. And so while there's Christians practicing in those areas, I think those folks have a lot harder road to walk than I do, because in my scenario, I'm sticking up for the injured party against a nameless, soulless insurance company. It's not a situation of deciding who gets a child or all these other terrible discussions that people have to go through, and my heart goes out to them because I really feel like I'm on the side of the angels.
David, what do you see every day that you wish you could fix in your practice?
I wish I could get everybody to buy a ton of uninsured motorists, because over and over again I have this scenario. A person comes to my office, there's someone else clearly at fault, they're very badly injured, they're going to miss work, they're hurt, and they're looking for a recovery. And we find out that the other car didn't have insurance and didn't own anything, and we find out also that my own client had just not kept their insurance up to current. Maybe things have happened, or maybe they only bought the $25,000 policy. That's all that's required. And sometimes their medical bills are $200,000. How are we going to deal with that? I can't make the money appear out of thin air. And so if I could just get everybody to buy a lot of it's relatively cheap for what you get. It even protects their family riding with someone else. It can overlap somebody else's coverage if they don't have enough. There's no downside. There's a huge upside. And because it's still rarely used, it's not that expensive. But if you need it, there is no other substitute. And that's what I would change.
David, what brings you the most satisfaction in doing what you do at Peel Law Firm?
I got to tell you, I keep all the thank you cards. I love it when people come by and bring me everything from a really nice shotgun to a fresh baked apple pie to hot sauce because they know I love it. It's the people's gratitude that we stuck with them through the bad times in their life. It's very, very satisfying. But to be honest with you, all of it falls down at the feet of the idea that every now and then, and it just happened last week, I get to lead a couple people to Christ. And when you introduce somebody to the Savior and you realize out of your whole week, that's the only thing that probably has any eternal significance, because they pass from death into life and darkness into light. And I remember when it happened for me. And that's the long-term ministry aspect of what I do that I really enjoy the most. Nothing's more rewarding than heavenly rewards.